you are a lab. Your body is a health lab at all times. Your anxiety, there's a lot of things that we do in the normative sort of modern medical world where we say you have anxiety. Flip that around. No. What are you anxious about?
Anxiety is presenting itself.
Anxiety is presenting itself as a symptom because you're anxious about something. Okay. How do I figure that out? Go write down everything you're anxious about. Okay. What of that can you change? If you're anxious about a thing that's related, it's often with something that's unsaid in your life. It's a conversation you're not having with yourself or another person. Cool. Have the conversation. I guarantee you won't feel anxious anymore in the same way.
That's so powerful.
But we diagnose people and we put them in these boxes of you are, you have. And those diagnoses, they make us feel limited. And the fear that we have around accepting, like, I have a rash is then I'm a person with eczema. I'm a person, with psoriasis versus I'm experiencing this rash. What's up?
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Krista Berlincourt, the CEO and co-founder of Kenshō Health. And on today's episode of Ever Forward Radio, I talk about whole health, finding balance, and moving ever forward in your health journey.
Krista, hello, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You've been through a lot and been to a lot of places in search for one thing that I'm constantly in search for, or I've been in search for. Now I feel like I'm in an optimization, but that could always change. And I know my listeners are in search for and searching to optimize our health. When it's going well, we want to keep it well, but sometimes it's not. It even feels like it's fighting us in every way possible. And that's kind of my understanding of your story. What was going on and why did you have to travel the world to be here today doing what you're doing?
I mean, I wish I knew now what I know then, or what I knew now. Yeah, what I didn't know then.
Yeah.
I wish I knew then what I now know.
There we go.
There we go.
Somebody correct us, please.
There we go.
I wish I was smarter.
I wish
all the time.
I wish I could see into the future. But the truth is that I went through a lot, but everyone goes through a lot. That fundamentally we are all human, and the human experience is the stuff we don't talk about. We don't talk about our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, our spiritual health, our financial health, our familial health, our social health, our lives with our friends, the trauma that comes up, the chaos. We don't talk about even our career health, right? And health is so much more than biomarkers and blood work. It's the answer to one question, which is, how do you feel, really? And so often the data from the medical side might show you're fine, you're good enough, your weight is good enough, your blood pressure is good enough. And those good enough measures are pretty rough. I mean, they're pretty low standard, medically speaking, to be in the percentage of okay. But then there's something inside of you that says, I don't feel good. Like I just don't feel good. And for me, there were so many contributing factors that it took really moving away each layer of the onion to get clear on what was going on for me. So
what did you find in each layer? Was it an answer or was it another question? Because sometimes it's one or the other in my experience.
I think it comes with each, right? You get an answer, and then on the other side, it's like, what's the next layer of the question, that the next piece? And the first for me was really, I was doing too much. There was a too muchness. I was living in Portland. I fell in love with someone who lived in Austin. I started going back and forth to Portland and Austin every 2 weeks. My company was acquired and I started going to New York. I spent about a third of the year out there.
So I was all over the U.S.
All three, kind of the Bermuda Triangle of the soul. But I didn't recognize that because to me, I was so young when I started that job. I was 25. The company skyrocketed so quickly. It went from a handful of us to 450 when I left over the course of 4 years and was acquired 2 years in. That rate of change is so rapid that you're no longer even conscious around how much energy am I putting out and that you're tired. And then you add on all of the travel that I was doing. It's hard to be grounded when you're not on the ground, right? That's not quite possible.
Literally, yeah.
And then my world opened up, that with the company being acquired, it opened up in terms of the places that I was invited to go. And I had financial stability for the first time in my life. And so I started traveling then for leisure, for fun, for exploration, for curiosity. And I was just I was exhausted. So what I found on the beginning was that what was diagnosed as a chronic adrenal fatigue and the beginnings of Addison disease was really just my body's way of saying like, yo, I'm tired. This sucks. Please listen to me. And what I found over the course of the years that followed was you have to listen to your body's whispers so that you don't have to hear it scream. You know?
I'm sorry. I literally just shared that exact statement with my guest right before you.
Do you think we're connected?
Right? What, as you were telling this story, I'm just like, wow, this is so, Jason Tartik was just here. This is probably not going to be in sequential order when this goes live, but we were just having the same conversation of just how his physical self was paying the ultimate toll, but everything else was going so well. You know, this crazy success, the most financial success and health and abundance he's ever had. And then he had this crash, quite literally just had to leave a board meeting and just go fall down on the bathroom floor and just like panic attack, all this craziness. And I was like, yeah, you know, it's kind of like this phrase that pay attention to your body's whispers before it screams.
Right. And I think it's all whispers, right? It happens in
Were
relationships too.
You
I can hear you. Wow. I'm omniscient.
Yeah.
No, but you think about relationships that go poorly, right?
Yeah.
And we have all had the friend who comes to you one day and says like, they left me and I don't know. I never saw it coming. Fast forward a year and a half. They're like, oh my gosh, here were all the signals that I wasn't listening to.
How did I not see this sooner?
And it's, you chose not to. It's so much easier to be blind when the answer is something we don't want to acknowledge, right? And in the way that you can have, you know, infidelity in a relationship, you can have infidelity in a soul. You can cheat on yourself. You can do things that are consciously diverting away from sort of the promise that each of us has to ourselves to remain like healthy and happy and whole, right?
Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, for sure. Who wants to live in 3 cities at once? And
it sounds cool, right?
It sounds cool at first. At first it is cool. And then it's, I'm tired. I don't want to get on this red-eye flight. I don't want to pack my bag again. I don't want to. But you can shift your perception, or at least you can try to say, no, it's fine. It's good enough. I'm okay. And I think
I'm complaining or I'm being ungrateful or
exactly.
People would love to be in this opportunity or in this relationship.
Or like just tough it out. You know, like you're so fortunate. You're complaining about going on vacation. You're complaining about going to another city where you know, someone else is paying for all of your expenses while you're there. And so you can, but you're not listening to this internal piece of you that's saying like, but I'm not okay. And I think the thing that's so interesting there, you know, we work with clients, it's like that thing can't be wrong. That intuitive piece of you that's your reptilian brain. It's your internal compass.
It's there for one reason only, to literally save your life. Like
correct.
All the time, keep you safe.
And when we go into override, we really do. We go into, I think, you know, I pushed my body beyond endurance. Like it was doing so much where I was traveling, I think at one point it was like 70 flights a year, you know, because I was
sure you got a lot of points,
a lot of
miles there.
But then actually I was talking to friends on this trip recently. How sick is it that airlines reward us for that? Like, I think what did I reach? Like sapphire status or something. Like you've reached the ultimate status because you're never home. And now you
hope diamond.
And now you exactly. And now you can actually gift it to someone else in your life. You can bring a partner. Why? Because they're like, your relationships are for sure falling apart. You're going to have to give this to someone. Otherwise, you're going to be alone forever.
You're going to have to swindle somebody to come with you if you want to keep them in your life.
Right. And my co-founder actually gave it to me. That's how I started. And I was like, wait a minute. This is all a sick game.
Damn.
Yeah.
You know, but it's so true. I love how you kind of expanded on the aspect of beyond just our body whispering to us when change needs to happen, or even just to be aware of something before it turns into a scream and we suffer, our health suffers, really. I love how you're kind of sharing in your job and relationships. How can you take what you know now to look back then and use that same lens? Like, what would you have done differently, or what telltale signs do you see now in your relationship, in your business, in yourself, beyond just the health and the wellness aspect? Because I know you're not alone. There's the person listening right now is probably going through that as well.
I think it's all of us. But, you know, like the company, you know, I suppose the irony now is that we built a business around solving this one thing, right? Is balance, is health. And so I would have looked at my whole health wheel and said, like, am I whole? And I remember the first time that I actually took that test with my naturopath, and it's self-diagnostic. You're taking, you know, the quickest you can possibly take it, 1 second per answer. from 1 to 10 rating, how are you in family and career and romance and friendships and personal growth and, each piece of these 10 core contributors to health. And I remember looking at mine in the end and it was like, everything except for my job and my relationship was like a 2 because I was so focused on powering this romance that was in another city and keeping it alive and my job.
What an intense realization, literally staring you back.
Oh, it was, and I just remember being like, oh shit. Okay, cool.
Is this bad?
Yeah. And then the naturopath is like, so what did you notice? And I'm like, well, I think I noticed that I'm a hardcore like F- and everything except for 2 areas. And that could be contributing to perhaps why I'm tired. And she was like, right. And those 2 things are asking you to travel all the time. So do you think it's your travel? And I was like, no, because I need to travel for my job and for this relationship. So it's not that. Like there's so much resistance to accepting this long distance lifestyle isn't working.
But how quick you were to justify it.
Oh yeah. Because who wants to accept change when everything's working externally, right? When you're like, but I'm going on vacations and I'm financially stable and my work matters to other people. My work matters to me. I have friendships. They were very unhealthy and falling apart because I wasn't present. What I would do now is look at that test immediately and not fight it and say like, okay.
Just surrender to it. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Like just it is what it is. And now where do I want to start in order to improve that? Because a bumpy wheel can't roll. So if you're imbalanced and you notice like, well, my body feels great, but I feel unwell. It's like, there's 9 other things that contribute to whole health. I would have not fought that so hard.
Yes. It's just wild how much of our health we could have saved or made better sooner, like looking back at things now. For me, long story short, is just, I wish I would have just allowed myself to feel things in terms of my mental and emotional health, because it quite literally was just a matter of time before it wreaked havoc on my physical health. Just give yourself a lot of grace too when you're going through these things, because when you realize whether you're getting a functional medicine test or just journaling, or maybe a loved one is kind of like intervening with you, just give yourself the grace to just hear that and process it, and just to quite honestly do what you did. Just really finally surrender to it now.
Yeah, I think reminding yourself it's all human.
Yeah.
Like
it's not our fault.
No, that's even, I mean, this is we could have a whole podcast on this, but that puritanical ideal of having these taboo subjects that we're not allowed to talk about, that is really the underpinning of all that's wrong with our health. Because if the moment we noticed a symptom, if the moment we had anxiety, if the moment we had a weird digestive issue or saw a rash, we said, hey, something's up. But the trigger for most people is excited about I'm going to repress that, try to ignore it because it scares me. And I'm not allowed to do this, right? Like this permissive idea that being human is somehow bad. And the stuff that comes with it, unless we're perfect, is bad. That creates an environment where effectively our health sends us signals, which is great, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, you're like, my bank account's draining. But rather than acknowledge that our bank account is draining, we freak out and we like hide our eyes and we pretend that everything's okay. And that pretending, the delta between stimulus and response, that liminal space is the magic zone where we get to make a decision. I would have made better decisions to be like, cool, data point, let's solve it, versus I'm not looking.
I love that. And it's a good reminder of philosophy or approach to life that I have or try to adopt, is when we look at the obvious problems in life of this didn't go my way or this happened, like the seemingly negative things, the things that we don't want more of in life, right? What I've done over the years is try to get better and quicker at saying, to quote my man Jocko, good. Okay, this is a gift. I've never actually thought about applying that same approach or philosophy to my health.
To your whole life. It's funny. I have
dope. I got a rash. Like, like cool lesson.
Cool. My girlfriend's actually got me this bracelet for my birthday last year. It says, okay, perfect. We were in Spain and there was an issue with a rental car. I took the car from one island to the other island. I did not know that was a faux pas. I drove the car. I didn't have service. And then one day I got a call that said, hey, this is the rental car company. If you don't bring the car back by this evening, we're going to arrest you. And I was like, okay, the thing is there's no more ferries. So I can't make it back to the other side of the island. And the thing with the Spanish translation, or just culturally, that's very funny, is they say like, vale, perfecto. And you're like, okay, perfect. Like, okay, perfect.
We're going to arrest you. Perfect.
Okay. Well, sir, I can't make it back tonight. So we're going to arrest you. Well, okay then. Okay, perfect. Ciao. And you're like, oh shit. And it's so good when things come up in life. Like someone breaks up with you, an investor says no, you lose your job, your flight is canceled. You're like, okay, perfect. Cool. But there's no fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
And that just allows you to fix it so much faster.
This is the most necessary conversation for me to have right now. Yesterday just got back from a little vacation in Tulum with some friends. And from the start, it was a shit show. Like I did not even technically put my foot on Mexican soil before my wallet was gone. So immediately I have no idea. I have no credit cards, no debit cards, no nothing. All my cash is gone. After that, it was just lost passport, missed flights, like just interactions with local police, just a mess.
Interactions with local police.
Well, like security, we'll say. It was at like a music festival thing. But thankfully, no police. But just after every encounter, of course, I'm just like, this really sucks. But immediately I was able to kind of go back on, all right, practice what you preach, go back to just like good kind of thing. And not only did it immediately cause a change state for me so that the rest of my day, more importantly, like the people around me didn't suffer of like me having a bad attitude or just being in a bad mental state, which most likely would have caused other problems that were going to happen anyway. But the whole aspect of adding that to our health, I think is just like so pertinent, so necessary. Yeah.
I think of it all as signals. Like we pay a lot of money for health tests, right? So you order a lab test, which our company can certainly help you do. We're fortunate enough to be the first company to have a direct-to-consumer link to the largest lab. So any question you have, we can get answers. But you also are a lab. Your body is a health lab at all times. Your anxiety, there's a lot of things that we do in the normative sort of modern medical world where we say you have anxiety. Flip that around. No. What are you anxious about?
Anxiety is presenting itself.
Anxiety is presenting itself. It's a symptom because you're anxious about something. Okay. How do I figure that out? Go write down everything you're anxious about. Okay. What of that can you change? If you're anxious about a thing that's related, it's often with something that's unsaid in your life. It's a conversation you're not having with yourself or another person. Cool. Have the conversation. I guarantee you won't feel anxious anymore in the same way.
That's so powerful.
But we diagnose people and we put them in these boxes of you are, you have. And those diagnoses, they make us feel limited. And the fear that we have around accepting, like I have a rash, is then I'm a person with eczema. I'm a person, with psoriasis versus I'm experiencing this rash. What's up?
So true. And I want to kind of dive into the actual testing component. You were talking about how you went and saw a naturopath and you went down this whole functional medicine route, which really sings to my soul because that has helped me immensely over the years of just optimizing, but solving problems in a preferred way, in a much more holistic way. Can you break down for us what actually are we talking about here when we're going through naturopath medicine, when we're going through functional medicine? Why did you choose to go that route? And what benefits did you get from those routes over maybe traditional, yo, doc, things aren't feeling so hot here on my arm. Let me get a pill for that and just be on my merry way.
Well, back then I was clinically tired. Effectively, I remember when I was a kid, I read celebrity magazines. I think growing up in a small town, in a river town in Oregon, they were like my link to the big shiny world. And I remember reading all those stories about like this Lindsay Lohan is admitted for exhaustion. And you're like, what is exhaustion? Is that just a euphemism for way too many drugs? Maybe. Or it can actually be that she didn't listen to that whisper of your body is crashing and hormonally you're off. So that's where I was when I actually got on a flight from Portland to Austin. I landed at my boyfriend's, and I think we were meant to fly to India the next day to see his family, if I recall correctly. And I started having this tension in my chest that was so strong, and it was always there. But it was like painful, and I worried I was having a heart attack. So I went to the ER, and they said, well, sort of, you're having a hormonal heart attack. So your body has reached cortisol ground zero. And because of that, it's using adrenaline to wake you up. And so because you landed, and keep in mind, I've been doing this for 2.5 years, taking the only flight from Portland to Austin is a 9:30 p.m. flight that lands 3 hours later in Houston, has an hour and a half layover, and then lands me in Austin at 5:30. So for 2 years, you're just playing with your circadian rhythm. So I get there and I think, great, I'm having a heart attack, I'm dying. And come to find out that the medication that I was on of having a cortisol injection once a month, I'd said, I'm doing what you told me to do. And the response was, well, I guess you just need more drugs more often. And that's that inner voice that says something where it's like, oh, hell no, that doesn't compute. I've been healthy and something is wrong. And so it wasn't until I went to a naturopath that they were willing to do more tests to really explore.
Willing being a key word there.
I think willing.
Yeah,
there
I
are
would
tests
agree.
for everything.
Yeah.
So if you have a stomach thing and you're a doctor, it doesn't do a GI test. It's not that they can't. They have just chosen not to. And frankly, the cost of tests is pretty accessible at this point.
It's come a long way.
It's come a long way. And there's a lot of direct-to-consumer options and ways that you can bill insurance and. But I went into the naturopath, we did the life wheel, and I was like, oh shit, I'm out of balance. I think I understand this philosophically. And then practically, we started digging into the data, and it was like, yeah, my hormones were completely off. I wasn't producing any estrogen. I was producing testosterone. So effectively, my chemical body was turning into like a man in overdrive in order to make it.
I think the clinical term is hot mess.
Hot mess, yeah. I was there. And I was, still doing everything right. So then your inner and outer world no longer mirror each other, right? You're getting all this positive affirmation and praise, but inside you know that something's wrong. So then you feel even more broken. But the testing provides objective answers that actually give you perspective. It's just like anything, your comprehension test. There's your written and your practical exam, right? You take your driver's license test. You can do the written, and then you do the practical, and you're like, you don't know how to drive. Yeah,
real world meet, book world.
Yeah,
book smarts meet street
objective,
smarts.
subjective, whatever it is. And the test gave me permission. That was, that is a lot. Oftentimes, what tests give us is we don't trust ourselves, so we take a test, and the test says you're hormonally imbalanced. And you're like, oh, I'm not fundamentally flawed.
Right. Yeah.
Because we live in this permissive culture of taboo where we believe if something's wrong, we must be a broken person versus like, nah, man, you're just burnt out and you really need to work on this thing over here.
So what has it done for you since then? How has quite literally coming face to face with this multifacetedness that is us being a human being and your unique health and wellness, what things have stayed? What things maybe were introduced that you had no idea were even a contributing factor to what you needed to optimize or wanted to kind of take charge in your life?
My big thing now is just this recognition that it's all human. And when something comes up now, I'm like, cool. Okay, perfect. Let's explore that. Vale, perfecto. Because that's it. That's the reality. And that has stayed. So let's see, I left my job. I left my relationship. I left my house. I flew to South America. I took a one-way ticket to the Galapagos Islands. I was like, I got to go find myself.
Wow.
And my conscious mind wasn't smart enough yet to know, like, of course you need nature. You grew up in a river town, like in the way that someone who lives somewhere where no one else speaks their language, of course you need that. But I didn't know that. So I slowed down enough to hear my body, and I learned to sail around the other islands. And I met this naturalist dude, and then I went to the Amazon rainforest, and I lived there for a long time and studied permaculture. And at that point, I realized I hadn't been in one place for a month in years. I had been moving so much. I had not had 21 days in a place.
And you don't realize this until after the fact, until you actually made yourself sit
and
down.
I'm like day 21, and I'm like, holy crap, I haven't done that in years. So there's so much unraveling. And some of it can say, if you're listening to this, it could be this woman's just entirely not conscious of her life, but it was that my life had been built to sustain itself at that pace, at this, this sprint pace, and I couldn't endure it. But then I came back from the Amazon and I landed in LA, and I still, there were things that then physically didn't feel okay. Hormonally, I felt okay. It's like, lo and behold, went to a functional medicine doctor, did a test, had a gnarly parasite.
Wow.
There were answers, and it was, okay, you probably picked that up living in the Amazon rainforest or whatever else you were doing.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah.
So now I would say the big shift is notice something, much as you would with your car. Like a sensor goes on in your car, which I think is a really good metaphor.
Early warning lights are there for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. And then a lot of people are like, I don't know how to air up my tires. I'm just going to leave it. Then your tire blows up. Now, when a warning signal comes on, I go to someone who's an expert who actually knows how to read the signals. And if they say, oh, we're not sure, which might happen with your car, likely you'd take it in and they'd say, cool, let's check your pressure. They'd do a test and they'd say, yeah, you have low air pressure in your tires. And then they'd examine it and they'd say, that's because it's low on tread or you have a nail. And then they'd fix it.
It is this way because not
it is this way
you
because,
are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest shift is, cool, here's a presenting symptom. It is this way because let's try this thing to solve it. If that doesn't work, let's try something else. That's healing, is getting to the root cause of the symptom, not masking it with a pharmaceutical that's effectively suppressing the thing that's telling you something's wrong.
So here we are in 2022. We have access, through smartphone, through TVs, through so many things now. First and foremost, knowledge to kind of scratch that itch to become curious of like, I'm finally paying attention to my body, how I feel, how I look, my relationships. We have more quick and more reliable access to experts if we want to go beyond just the self-study. And then we have the ability, like through amazing organizations as your own and just telehealth and, walking down the street now more and more of let me actually take action. Let me actually like do the test, do the thing. Where do you think people maybe jump too soon in one of those three steps? Or should we be going more quickly just to, all right, it is 2022. I should take advantage of all these amazing accesses to healthcare and stuff. And I should just go in and get a test and do this stuff. Is it truly awareness necessary first and then kind of getting these functional medicine scans or learning more about what's going on in our body? Or would you recommend maybe everybody just kind of getting a better baseline now?
I think of it as like 3 prongs. So it's notice. So that conscious of like, be aware of, notice the signal and accept it. Don't suppress it. Like I notice that I'm not sleeping well. I notice that I'm anxious. I notice that my bowels are super weird, whatever the amount of things that people share with,
I notice I've been in arguments with my significant other more than usual.
Right.
Beyond just the self.
I notice, I notice that my mind is busy. I notice that I can't focus on like notice what you notice and don't judge it. So just notice. And then I would test it. So like test to find out what is the answer. And so sometimes that test can be a practical test of working with a professional in the mental health space who can really support you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or it could be testing through a lab test, right, in the physical health space. And then it would be use that to diagnose and then treat. I think today especially living in LA, the health world here, you're like, my stomach's upset. So I'm pretty sure that I'm allergic to gluten, dairy, sugar, and I need to go on a no pectin, no lectin diet. And so I'm actually only eating things from Erewhon that are crudité vegetables, but not, cruciferous greens.
And I need to call my shaman.
And you're like, you might just need a nap. Because the thing is, unless you went to school and you went to, a nationally board certified health coaching program, or you are a medical professional,
which I did,
which you did. So what I would say is we notice something now, we either judge it and then we self-diagnose. And that's just about as good as like going to Dr. Google, which is not great. And then we try to self-treat, self-medicate. And our paths are often really well-intentioned, but ill-informed, where the truth is that you don't need to remove all of those things from your diet. You actually need to drink more water and get more sleep, and then your digestive system would be solved, or whatever it is that's going on. And that really can't happen without the support of someone on a consistent basis and acknowledging that change takes time. So a quick fix is going to be temporary because it's not the foundation. I also think, direct to consumer lab testing. I have a few friends in the space. I love that they're creating a bigger door, inviting more people into insight, but it can be really a lonely place when you get your results and you find out that something isn't what you want. You're like, I'm metabolically sensitive and my hormones are off and I have all this weird stuff with my digestion. And the only resource I have is this app that's giving me like suggestions based on what's worked for everyone, but humans are one of one. That's I don't know, kind of not right.
I agree.
What do you think? Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And it's a fine line. It's a fine line of sitting with yourself long enough to get this level of awareness about these things, and then it's like, okay, great. I feel great here. I don't feel so great here. And then it's the realization of the work that's going to take to keep the good stuff and to improve the other stuff. And then follow up with, all right, well, what really is a trusted resource? What actually are the action steps I need to take? And, who is going to give me the best ones? It's kind of a double-edged sword. I think it's a realization of cool. I'm understanding more about my body, but shit, I've got to work on my body, my mind, my wellness even more. I brought up my health coaching aspect because it was a joke, but also like it really, for me to like go deeper into it professionally, first and foremost served me. So by studying it and going to school and grad school and getting all these certifications, like that was my career. And I knew I was supporting that, but also it was the most advantageous for me because I was learning new ways to ask things of my clients, to help my clients. But where do you think I did it first? On myself.
Totally.
And with you, I know you've kind of done that as well. You've gone like, all right, cool. I'm understanding so much more about myself. I want to keep understanding more about myself. Let me do this professionally. Mm-hmm. So what was the jump like for you to not keep this information and knowledge and health to yourself, to then create something that provides it for so many other people?
I think there's a point when you realize that you aren't asking a question, but a question is being asked of you.
Love that. Yeah.
And my last company, it's funny that we're having this conversation right now because on the drive over here, I just caught up with someone who we hired out and they moved to Portland and we stayed buddies, and I haven't spoken to him in probably 3 or 4 years. And we were talking about his health and his journey and my journey. And he brought up my going away party, like the moment I decided to leave. But when I was at the company, I was working on a study on shame and confidence. And that was really when I uncovered the first layer of the onion, was like, holy shit. In fact, the reason we all feel the way we do is because our country was founded by Puritans who were on this mission to remove all the things that make us human and make them controlled by the church, which is no knit to religion, but to create an environment where all of the things that make us human are things you're not allowed to talk about. Well, then you're never going to have a permissive relationship with yourself. And I was like, shoot, someone should really do something with this. So I worked on a study and I was going to do this big thing. And then lo and behold, it didn't fit in the bounds of a company. And so I left. And I think that leaving was step one. And then it was all of my exploration and travel. And then it was coming to LA. It was meeting my co-founder and acknowledging that I had a curiosity in building a company in the space. It was going back to school and studying transformative psychology and coaching. And then it was building the company. And each of those things were giving myself permission to accept that there was more to learn and that the body of knowledge that I was amassing as a person, as a founder, should be shared. Because if I was an explorer, I'm reading a book right now that's wonderful. Highly recommend it. Silence in the Time of Noise.
Yeah, I have a photo of that. It's on my list.
Kagi. I don't ever pronounce his name correctly, but it's like if I was exploring the Arctic, absolutely, I'd take pictures, bring it home, and share notes. And so I think in the same way, like that's what I started to feel was, well, this has to be shared because I'm amassing too much data on what makes people whole, on whole health contributors. I'm learning too much about the type of whole health practitioners that people are looking for, search data, practical data, clinical data. You just have to go for it. And you are your first patient. I mean, that's a funny thing.
Absolutely.
People are like, oh, so how does coaching start? I'm like, well, for the first year, you're miserable because you're doing all of the work on yourself and digging up everything that's wrong with you. But really not wrong. You're finding out just how human you are. And then the second year, you get to help other people find out how human they are. So that's like kind of.
What do you think people are looking for most right now? What are we looking for now in the understanding of how human we really are?
I think we're all looking for permission. I think the most, the funniest thing that the conversations I have with people often, even investors, people who are so type A, like the wall is up and we get 5 minutes into a conversation. They'll be like, I don't know, like, can I talk to you about my poop? And I'm like, sure, we can go there. I thought we were talking about money, but I'd love to.
This is a safe space, right?
I'd love to talk about your bowels. Like, cool. And I think that energy, once you really have found that level of comfort inside yourself, we should all be really comfortable with how human we are because we can't change it. And every time you succeed and you overcome the challenge, you get new challenges. That's the way of life. So you reach peak health. This is a big thing. A lot of my female friends are trying to get really healthy to get pregnant. Then they get pregnant and they have the baby, and then their body is postpartum, and it's a new journey. And then it's learning how to nurture another being and be a mother and a businesswoman, and you get new challenges. I think we all need that to be like, where you are right now is 110% fine. If you're 30 pounds heavier or 30 pounds lighter, if you have a rash or you don't have a rash, if you have existential angst or you feel super good, all good. And it can all be resolved with support. And no one should do it by themselves. That's just crazy.
You are exactly where you're supposed to be is another mantra that's been serving me well this last year or two.
Yeah.
Cannot agree more.
The trust. And I really don't think that people should be doing it by themselves.
We're not designed to. We're not meant to be alone for any prolonged period of time, I think. I mean, I love my alone time, and there's a lot you can do to learn and heal, but implementation, action, growth, health, true health of all facets, I believe, comes when you have a support system, when you're pouring into others and vice versa.
Totally. Accountability.
Yeah.
And belief
truly,
and knowledge. If I think about anyone who's listening to this at some point, you either went to school or started a new job. In those moments, there were things you didn't know, and you didn't know what you didn't know until someone graded you and told you what you didn't know. And then you learned, and then you grew. It's to allow ourselves to have that same learner's mindset, that same growth mindset, and be okay with it. And know that we're going to go forward and come back. I was, we were joking before this, my COVID weight dress where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to this wedding and it fit, but it doesn't fit now. And this was an okay, perfect moment where I was like, ballet perfecto, it doesn't fit. Cool. And I went to the tailor and he made, the string around my neck. He just made it into a lace up of an inch because it was an inch of the dress that didn't zip. And you're like, I can either just rag on myself for being like, how could you not fit into this dress? Okay, perfect. That's fine. And who knows, in a month, it could be too big because it's just part of being human.
You bring up an interesting concept that I can definitely relate to, and I'm sure everybody listening and watching can as well. We prioritize our health when we finally attach a marker for success to it. The wedding, the promotion, I want to get pregnant. And then it's kind of for a lot of us, after that, we just let go of it. We don't maintain the thing that we prioritize so proudly to get us to where we want to be now. And then we wonder why, when we get to that point, we become unhappy, we become sick, we can't maintain it. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Why do we not prioritize maintenance after we use our health to get us to the next stage in life?
We were just talking about this actually today as a team. The science has proven that having a why for your goal, someone who has a why behind their goal, makes them 90% more likely to achieve that goal. So I want to lose weight as a goal. I want to lose weight because I want to have more energy or feel better in my skin or zip up that dress, whatever. But that's actually a shallow why because it's not really about the dress, right? So getting to that underlying, you call it the underlying motivation, the hidden agenda in coaching, getting there is the thing that powers us forward. So that's the thing that generally catalyzes someone into change, right? They're like, I can't this thing, not I don't have enough money. It's I don't have enough money to buy a house because I actually want to feel secure and own a home. There's something deeper, right?
Always, I think. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And so it's not until we feel that pinch of lack that we get ready to grow. I learned a few years ago, lobsters, I don't know if you know this one, they actually have to feel this intense sensation of nerve pain. Imagine a nerve pain in your neck. And when that happens, it triggers a response in their bodies that actually allows their skeletons to grow. They shed their shells and then they create a new shell.
An immense source of pain first.
Immense source of pain.
Wow.
And that is the trigger where they actually have to get uncomfortable in order to grow. People are kind of the same.
We should all be more like lobsters.
Well, we are.
We are.
And unfortunately, I don't, I think I'd love to say we should all stay in conscious awareness and prioritize our health at all times. But more often than not, it's those little imbalances that tell us that something isn't working, right? A signal comes in and it says, hey, this isn't going so well. I think though that if we were, in my my desired world and the one that we're trying to create with Kenshō is like, I would love to see a world where people have a health coach all the time, not for 3 months, not for 6 months, but in perpetuity. And that's paid for by your employer or by yourself, because it's as accessible as, 5 drinks.
Absolutely.
We've scaled that cost down to $129 a month. And there's a platform where you take the whole health test every month. And so you can see how you're trending over time. And if you start to see that fun, there's actually a woman on her team where she was like, my fun has dwindled down to 0. I was like, okay, dude, you should take 3 days off and just like go live your life. And
wow.
But we can notice because we're not always living in conscious awareness. Life is busy. The world is crazy. We're in the midst of a war right now. We're coming out of a pandemic, or as my friend who I just spoke to said, the plague. People have lost their jobs. People have lost family. Like, we can't be expected to also keep tabs on all of our markers and how whole we are.
The pinch that moves us forward. I love that. Which brings me to my final question to ask you, moving forward in life. Hopefully this conversation has been the pinch for somebody listening. And in several ways, it has been for me as well. So thank you again for being here. Ever forward, those 2 words. What does that mean to you when you hear it? How does it fall on you here today after our conversation?
I think it's the summation of everything we've talked about. We are ever moving forward.
Be more of a lobster.
And even if it feels messy and uncomfortable, or I like to say like fun comfortable, finding the disco and the discomfort, like, yeah, it sucks. Growth is messy. And there's moments that don't feel like joy, but you are moving forward because life can't actually move backwards. That's not possible. So allowing yourself to just take stock of that and let it be what it is. And for me, for sure, a lot of that.
Yeah. We say the things that we, need the most ourselves, I think. There's never a right or wrong answer. I appreciate always my guest interpretation. So thank you for that. Well, Krista, this was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.